Okay, and so after I spilled my story to her and had, told her things that she had no business hearing, right? That was none of her business, namely about, my issues with this person and how much I felt like I was, at the mercy of him. Then she was like, okay, I'll okay it with my chief and we'll see what can happen, right? And I took, she made a copy of the birth certificate and I took it. I took the original and I left. And I was livid because what she was basically saying is that the government in one capacity can can work off the fact or can manipulate the fact that that my daughter is not a citizen, not yet a citizen. What she was effectively saying was that my daughter, while not effectively a citizen, while not proven a citizen, could be manipulated by the government. It was basically saying the government can manipulate my daughter's status. The fact that in one instance at the Freiburg Jugendamt, they can say, she's not yet a citizen, so we can't recognize her, and we can't give you the advice you would give to people who live here because you don't live here. And look, I live here. Okay, I live here. I'm effectively homeless. I live in an Airbnb, but that's my home. There's no other place that I can call home. My things are there, our presence is there. She attends school. We're trying to infiltrate the system. This is how it begins. You don't just start living somewhere for 6 months. No. At one point, you have to move to a place, and then living has to kind of, happen, right? And now how they define living in in Europe, at least what I've read, is like 6 months in a place, right? But she won't be given 6 months in this place because she's still identified as an American citizen. So she's not given 6 months in the place. And you can say all you want to. Yeah, well, there are people who come here who put up a fight and stay 6 months and they stay illegally and then things work out for them. Well, how do I know that how is this a guarantee? Why should I risk my ability to come back here and maybe this does not play out for me the way it has for other people? Why should I risk this and then say, okay, luckily it played out for me? What if it doesn't? Then I can't come back here and argue the case that my kid is German, right? I can't move retroactively. And then what about all this litigation fees and stuff? Like, people who are not able to pay for litigation, what happens to them? What happens to people who are basically, just used and left pregnant, right? And there's no recourse. There's no coming to Germany. There's no living in Germany. There's no sending their kid to school in Germany. There's half of the child's identity just dies with the departure of the father. And there's no way that a poor mother is going to be able to pick herself up along with the kid, afford airfare, come, integrate, assimilate. That takes time. And be able to, just apply for their heritage. This is an application for one's heritage, and it is messed up. It's messed up. And so I left and I felt, I could feel myself already like starting to shake and break down because I left with her saying that she was going to contact him. I left with her saying that she was going to write him with the seal of her, with her authority, right? And basically kind of use that to kind of persuade him, right? Like, hey, I'm writing you from the Rathaus in Bingen, and I'm saying to you that your ex and your child are living here. Mind you, it has not been proven he's her child according to the state, right? She's his child according to the state. And, so by the way, we need this DNA testing, blah, blah, blah. Like, it doesn't make any sense because the one in Freiburg was like, no, we're not going to help you. No, we're not going to help you. No, we're not going to help. And, they gave me no recourse. Like, this is not how they gave me no solutions to how I could resolve my situation. Like, go to the family court, apply for this, so-and-so will help you. All the law procedures that happen in German anyway. In Germany, they happen in German. So someone like me would need a translator, would need to hire a lawyer because I do not speak German. And so there's a lot of places in the law where proviso you have some degree of Germanness, you're locked out for good. You're locked out. You're locked out. And your kid is locked out because you're the proxy, right? So your kid is locked out. And there is no proper acknowledgement. And keep in mind, we've been here for 3 months, right? We're going to 3 months now. And this person has had multiple opportunities to say, let's do this. Let's test, I went through Ancestry. I tested on Ancestry, right? And I said to him, hey, and I said to his sister as well, hey, I just submitted our DNAs, if you do the same, even if I pay for it, if you do the same, it will show us that you're related, right? Do you want to go this course? Now, of course, he doesn't have to agree to this. This is DNA, right? You don't necessarily want their DNA in this database, but this was his very first response, right? When I said, what do you want? What course of action do you want to take? Do you agree that she's yours? He doesn't even want to look at her. He doesn't even want to look at her. And because I think it's an admission, right? He would be staring at his reflection and he would feel like a fool. So anyway, he doesn't want to look at her. He pretended not to see her. And he said, oh, definitely, yeah, DNA. And I just thought, how stupid you look, how stupid. And you can tell that somebody told him to say this. You can tell this is the advice of some fool who doesn't know me, who doesn't know, the situation, who doesn't care about any of us, who has somehow, he, the father, has told himself this person cares, to the extent that they would give them good advice. But this is not sound advice because you have a child and the person is clearly trying to set you against this. It sounds like a man, a man, it would take a real gnarly bitch to be the kind of person to do this. I would be shocked if this was coming from a woman. I would be shocked. I wouldn't be too shocked because some women can be so vicious and disgusting. But this sounds like the kind of advice from a man, the type of, just rid of all emotional anything, just do this all the time. And you can see in his eyes when I saw him, you could see the kind of, the excitement behind what he was told to do, He was told to be cold. And so you saw him schooling his features, schooling himself to with this kind of, I am your enemy kind of nonsense glare. And I was just and I could see beyond that. I could see into him and I could see the excitement and the kind of the excitement he was, demonstrating at seeing me again. I could see that. I had access to all of that. It was all over his face, but underneath this guise, underneath this kind of be cool, be calm, act collected. And he even had to school his features. You could see him putting, tensing his muscles in the lower part of his jaw to try to appear, serious and foreboding, to try to give the impression that he was a serious and angry guy, as if he had the reason to be angry. And I met that with my own genuine anger, and he could not look at me because I had a right to be genuine and he didn't. I had the right to be I had genuine anger and he did not. His anger was pretense. It was fake. And that thing doesn't last long. That thing, if you steer into fake anger with the truth, that thing scatters so quickly. I have hair over my face. And that's exactly what happened. His so-called anger could not withstand what he had done to me, the guilt and the shame of what he had done to me for 8 years. And so I was able to keep looking at him, and he had to just his eyes just hit down, went to the ground, went roaming all over the place, could not maintain the look. And if his look was justifiable, he would be able to maintain it. And then I asked him, why did you, I said, how can you look at yourself in the mirror every day? How? How can you look at yourself? How can you live with yourself? How can you know what you've done to a child and to a woman and live with yourself? Oh, there's some stupid noise. How can you live with yourself? And silence. This was met with silence. And then he, I said to him, what did I do? Pray tell, what did I do? What did I do to you? And he said, I'm not going to say anything. Because there's nothing to say. There is nothing to say. This was the one time he said he wasn't going to say anything. Everything else that he felt convicted over and convinced about, he said something about. But he could not answer why he had done this to me, because he was covered in shame, because there was no reason. I didn't cheat on him, as he tried to make a case, telling his sister, oh, he's not sure the baby's his, this nonsense. And then now it's like his kind of scapegoat. He's like, oh, I'm not sure this baby is mine. Anybody with eyes can see this child is his. Anybody with eyes. And anyway, so this is about the rat house. And so I want to focus, more on that. But all roads lead to this crossroad. All roads lead to this crossroad where, he is just in a position of conflict. He is conflicted. And he's conflicted because, well, I don't want to assume too much about him, but he knows that he loves me, that he loved me at least, and that he had nothing. He had nothing on me. Nothing. And he invented a lie to tell himself to get over me. And it was like, weeks, probably a few months before he was posting, the blonde girl all over the place. And I was having such a hard life, trying to make ends meet, and a very minimal social media presence, barely on. There's nothing to brag about. Life sucked. And but I noted, this barrage of blonde girls, always blonde girls on his profile, and then I lost, attention. I began to focus more on getting ahead in life, upward mobility, my schoolwork, and trying to make ends meet, especially because I realized he had no intention of helping. And a couple times I tried to get him, talk to him, especially at the age of 2, when my daughter asked about him and wanted to talk to him. I began to make more efforts again to talk to him. And whenever she asked me to stand in her proxy, I would always try to do that. But for the rest, I had resigned from this guy. And anyway, so it's really hard to hear the government is kind of or maybe it's a lack of knowledge, right? There's a lack of knowledge about what the government does. And this woman felt it was in her power. It was in her power, and she abused that because, she only wanted to act in my interest when I broke down, this is the only time she's like, oh, so you're human, let me help you. This guy is living freely. For 8 years I'm suffering, and then I'm told that he needs to okay my living and being in. And so, I go home petrified. I'm just thinking, oh my God, he's gonna know where I live. The other day I was walking to Bad Kreuziger, and the 2 guys just appeared behind me, and I was so shocked, and I began to almost jumped out of my skin. And how I know that something was wrong, it is the PTSD acting up, is the fact that immediately I thought they were going to kill me, and immediately I thought to run toward the water, the stream, the nearby stream. I thought run toward the water and keep running, in the direction of it. The chances are you're faster in a riverbed because I'm used to that, than having grown up in the Jamaican countryside, than they would be. This was the first thing in my head, and then I said to myself, oh my God, I went from 0 to 100. What does that say about my state of mind? I'm petrified underneath everything, I'm constantly on the alert and quickly to react and kind of jump out of my skin. And so the thought of this guy knowing where I was living was just, it was almost too much to bear. And I remember calling my sister and calling my other sister and just like kind of like in a state of panic and thinking, oh my God, he's gonna know where we live. And then I wrote to the woman again and I said, yeah, I was just there this morning. And, like very anxious, like, could you tell me what, copy me on what he says? Because I was thinking, this is just nutty that, this is the government saying that in one instant, they don't recognize me as, or us, me and my daughter as citizens, or sorry, as residents, right? Now, I should speak for her alone too. They don't recognize her as a resident, and at the same time, they're going to say he needs to know where she's, and he's not even on her birth certificate. So how can he be the presumed father in one case and not the presumed father in another case enough to give her, qualify her as a resident? It was conflicting information. And so then she writes back and she's like, oh yeah, after okaying it with my chief, it turns out you don't have to supply anything else. This is suffice. And I was livid. I was thinking, what kind of dumb is this? What do you mean? What do you mean you have to talk to somebody else for this to make sense? This is a matter of common sense. I am the only person on her birth certificate. What do you mean you have to ask her dad and put me through all of that this morning? Like I was like in her office doing my best to like hold it together. She clearly couldn't tell, which is, I guess, great for my acting skills, but my God, and on the inside I was just like freaking out. And going home was thinking, oh my God, this guy's gonna be able to tell her, no, he doesn't want us to live here and all this nonsense. What she was saying. And and no, he had no say in it, and she just didn't know how to do her job. And this is like the third place where people don't know how to treat someone who is not from here, who has a child who is German. I've been told everything from speak German in these places as a tourist, just having come here, speak German. And the woman, her lips were shaking, her hands were shaking. She was so angry, and I was thinking, I don't even know this woman from day. I don't know her. Why is she so angry? Why is she so angry? And telling me, like, bring a translator. And I'm thinking, wow, not to sound pejorative here, but like in the US, like it's as a state, as an advanced economy, you go to a government building and they provide translators for you. And I had all these assumptions about like, the German, like I said, like I alluded to earlier, the German culture is like more advanced, like in the sense that, they would have a translator in a government building, this has to do with the law, this has to do with like, like this is not like a joke, like if people misunderstand their positionality in a country, this can screw with like, their legal status, so many things. Like this is not the time to be like, to like be, messing up communication. This is a place where you need to have the highest kind of form of communication in a government agency. And so how shocking for me, as someone from another advanced economy, to come here and to discover that, you are left to your own devices and you need to provide, translation. I mean, it was one thing to culturally encounter the closing of, certain things on certain like banks and like on the weekend, like the early closing, the pharmacies are closed, doctors' offices, like things shut down on the weekend, right? The kind of use of cash, the heavy use of cash, the kind of the paucity of cards, at least the use of cards, and especially like in villages and stuff, like they have so much more of like a rudimentary system. Like I was shocked, but this is one thing. This is like cultural stuff, right? But when it comes like the law, come now, Germany, you can do better. You can do better. People need to understand this. And then she's saying, this is Germany, speak German. I'm like, my daughter is German and she doesn't speak German. This is Germany, speak German. Yeah, well, my daughter is German. She doesn't speak German. And I'm standing here in her proxy, and I'm trying to represent her as best as I can. And so I had to bring I had to kind of like have my friend translate over the phone in order to like tell this woman from the Jugendamt, like what it was that I was about. And even then, she even called her supervisor in, and even then, they didn't tell me this is, recourse. She's like giving me tissues. Oh yeah, here, you poor thing, you don't know who the dad is. I know who the father is. The state won't help me prove it. And this man is gallivanting and running around and giving me excuses all day about he has to go to Hamburg, he has to go to Frankfurt, he has to go to Stuttgart, for his job, blah, 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 right? And when it comes to like proving the thing that he refuses to admit, like, his child, like this child who like he's so surprised over, right? He's so surprised over her. Like, oh, first of all, in the first instance, I was cheating. So he wasn't sure she was his. Now I'm being deceptive. Like, what is it going to be? And if you encounter a child who you are shocked is yours, like, wouldn't you first like quickly try to determine, paternity? Like, you'd quickly do that, right? And he's like taking forever to do it. The last week when we were supposed to have met, he said, "Oh, I have COVID. I can't come tomorrow." And he texted me this on WhatsApp, which I asked him many times to not text me on. I said, do all of this via email. No. He texted me on WhatsApp saying, "I have COVID. I can't come to see you tomorrow." And it because I blocked him from, constantly like, talking to me, because I kept like, because I only talk to like a very few margin of people on WhatsApp. And so sometimes I text him by mistake. And I was just like, you need to not be on my WhatsApp. Like, here's, my email, please email me on it. And I would email him, and he only responded once to the emails. He refuses to talk to me by email. And always like, so what happened was, because I blocked him from talking to me, because then his conversations would just pop up, when I was, having a last conversation with somebody else. And then when I responded, like I was responding to them, because I don't even like look at the name, or I'm like texting, then I'm texting him. And so I was just like, don't write to me on WhatsApp. Just like write to me on via email. And then he refused to do it. And so I blocked him. And so the text came in, didn't reach me, of course. And so he's like, "Yeah, I sent you this." So we already went to the place. And this is a joke, because I was emailing him from really early in the morning and saying, "Hey, I'm going to be a little bit late because, today's photo day at her school. And so because it's photo day, like, I'm not going to be able to like be there on time, because she has to take the photo of the class." And I was so close to not even doing that, to just like taking her and going, and just like being like, "Okay, photo shoot, so sorry. We're just going to go because this is, this takes precedence," right? And it just so happened that the teacher's like, "No, she can come early and then leave early." And can you believe it? Had I taken her out of school, she would have missed the whole photo day. And so she missed school because I took her after the photo session early in the morning to go meet him, and he wasn't there, right? Because he refuses to talk to me via email. And I sent him several emails in the early morning. He's a businessman. He has this case pending. You should check your emails every day, right? Until you satisfy the requirements. And it's just been an absolutely deflating and just depressing experience, not just from him, but from the government. The fact that, here are a bunch of people being hired. Like, they're not just like they're answering questions, right? They're hired, they're paid. And the attitude toward me, the behavior toward me is just so shocking. It's so shocking and disheartening, because I'm not there to piss you off. I'm there to stand up for my kid. And I'm giving you all the information I have. And you are choosing, what you want to work with and what you don't want to work with. And it's kind of conflicting to the information online too, because online they make it, and especially, the consulate in New York is so much more helpful. Like, I was getting answers from the consulate in New York, right, where I was living. I was getting answers from them more readily, more speedily, more helpful answers than the people in the state my husband lives. Not husband, in the state that this guy lives, right? The father lives. In the state the father lives. He was their own system here on the ground, in the place where he lives. And they kept saying, "No, you have to go, like where does he live?" I'm like, "Freiburg." They're like, No. first of all, ask him where he lives, and then second of all, like, where do you live? No, you need to go to your place. Bingen doesn't have a Jugendamt. Bingen doesn't have like all these Landratsamt. It's a tiny village, and so I needed, his record is in and I gave him all of his name and everything. I gave him his name. They should be able to find him. And so it's just how deflating. Anyway, it needed to be said. It needed to be said that the rat house is not always a source of information. They may take information from you, but they are not as willing to give it. And it was this was deflating. This was a very deflating experience. Now my child is going to have to leave the country. We're flying out on the 12th. Right, we're taking leave of Germany because we don't want to overstay our time, our allotted time, right, as non-residents, and to be on the right side of the law. And so this is going to take her out of school. This is going to impact her learning. She has already been out of school too many times. I think that is conveniencing. And even to come here, it was such a long, taxing journey. Her journey to speak German has been long and taxing. To make friends, to assimilate. It is absolutely unfair to her to have to suffer through this and to now have to leave the country because she is considered illegitimate. Not just by her dad, but by the state.